Let's talk about that moment. The moment Shadur Sanders stepped back onto the Browns' practice field, helmet on, visor down, shoulders relaxed, like he hadn't just spent the last few weeks rehabbing an oblique injury that could have derailed his entire preseason. There was no warm-up act, no easing in. Just boom, a laser down the sideline, right into the breadbasket of a wideout who didn't even have to break stride. And suddenly, just like that, training camp didn't feel like a tune-up anymore. If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed. It felt like a statement, because Shedeur didn't just return to practice. He announced himself. This wasn't just about completing passes or looking good in reps. It was about presence, the way he carried himself, the energy shift when he walked onto the field. It was almost like everyone, coaches, players, media, had forgotten just how dynamic this kid is. But Shedeur, he never forgot. He was just waiting for the clearance to remind everybody. Now, here's where it gets dramatic, and you already know this story wouldn't be complete without a little controversy. Because for every crisp throw Shedeur makes, for every moment he shows leadership and composure well beyond his years, there's a wave of criticism ready to drag him back down. And not because he's playing poorly. Oh no, quite the opposite. It's because he dares to play with joy, with swagger, with presence. It's because he shows up with a smile and means it, because he can throw a perfect fade one moment and dap up a teammate the next without ever looking rattled. And for some people, fans, talking heads, anonymous Twitter critics, that's just too much to handle. Because in their minds, confidence and charisma must mean cockiness. But that's the thing about Shedeur. He doesn't blink, doesn't lash out, doesn't fall into the trap of defending what doesn't need defending. He lets the work talk. And that's exactly what it did this week. His footwork, cleaner than ever. His timing, lethal. That connection with his receivers, the kind of chemistry you can't fake, was on full display. You could see it especially in that fade route that lit up practice like a firework. And no one was more locked than Shedeur. No shoulder stiffness, no hesitation, just the quiet kind of confidence that says, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. And yet, despite that, there's still noise. There's always noise. Some folks can't help but bring his family into it, like being the son of Deion Sanders is some sort of shortcut. As if Shedeur hasn't had to prove himself at every level, every practice, every single snap. As if he didn't leave a Power 5 program and dominate at Jackson State. As if he didn't take the spotlight and earn it, not just inherit it. The narrative always seems to be just one bad throw away from slipping into skepticism. One mistake, and the critics are ready to pounce. But the funny thing is, that mistake hasn't come. And Shedeur, he's not in the business of giving people what they're looking for. He's in the business of exceeding expectations. Still, it's not just the media he has to tune out, it's the fans too. Because while many are behind him, cheering every throw, flooding Twitter with slow-motion clips from practice like proud cousins, others are, well, let's just say a little intense. Some of his biggest supporters sometimes make the mistake of being too loud, too aggressive, and it ends up fueling the fire for the haters. Suddenly, it's not about Shedeur's actual performance. It's about the noise around him, and that's unfair, because the guy just wants to play ball. But here's the thing. Even with all the pressure, all the expectation, Shedeur isn't cracking. In fact, he's getting sharper. While other rookies across the league are still figuring out how to adjust the speed of the game, how to build timing with their receivers, how to even read an NFL defense, Shedeur is already looking like he belongs. Not in a flash-in-the-pan way. In a sustainable, consistent, franchise quarterback way. Let's not pretend there isn't a comparison game being played in the background, either. You got guys like Kenny Pickett, who, for all the hype last year, is still battling inconsistency and now dealing with injuries. He's missed significant preseason time, and yet the criticism isn't nearly as sharp. Why is that? Why does Shedeur, coming off an injury and still outperforming expectations, get the harsher spotlight? Simple. It's because he's different, and different scares people. He doesn't fit the mold. He doesn't come in quiet, head down, repeating coach speak. He comes in real, honest, joyful, and people don't know what to do with that. They've never seen someone play quarterback like it's a conversation, not a sermon. Someone who leads with vibes and backs it up with execution. Someone who's just as dialed in watching film as he is hyping up the teammate. That's rare, and it matters, because the Browns of all teams need that kind of energy. They've been stuck in a carousel of safe decisions, Band-Aid starters, and quarterback controversies for what feels like forever. And here comes Shedeur Sanders, fresh off injury, smiling like he knows something nobody else does, and throw like he's been in the league 5 years. That doesn't just catch the eye of the fans. It catches the attention of the vets. There's a moment in every training camp when the players, not the coaches, not the media, start to figure out who really has it. And this past week, you could see the shift. Guys responding to Shedeur in the huddle. Linemen patting him on the helmet after a rep. Receivers fighting to get in on his group during drills. That's not marketing. That's respect. And Stefanski sees it too. Don't let the coach speak fool you. He's watching. He knows the difference between a developmental guy and a potential franchise centerpiece. He might not say it outright, but he's not blind. Shedeur isn't just working his way back from injury. He's staking his claim. And with the final preseason game looming, this is it. This is the moment where camp becomes career. If Shedeur steps on that field against the Rams and delivers the way we all suspect he can, this QB conversation, it gets very real. Because it's one thing to flash in practice, but he gets game action and throws like he's been throwing all week. Decisive, calm, surgical. There's no going back. You can't rebury a star once the world's seen it shine. So here we are. The comeback has already begun. The critics are getting quieter. The throws are getting louder. And Shedeur Sanders? He's not just back. He's arrived. All right. So let's dive even deeper into the why. Why this moment with Shedeur Sanders is bigger than just a strong day at training camp. Because what we're watching here isn't just a rookie with a good arm coming off an injury. We're watching something much rarer. A quarterback turning doubt into momentum right in front of our eyes. You can feel the shift not just in the reps or the throws, but in the way the entire operation around him is starting to pivot. Assistant coaches spending more time with him during walkthroughs. Veteran players asking him questions between drills instead of the other way around. Even the media, who started the offseason writing him off as a third stringer, are suddenly leaning in a little closer at each press availability. His presence isn't just rising, it's demanding to be noticed. And let's talk about that presence, because that's where the story really starts to feel different. There are plenty of young quarterbacks with big arms, with nice resumes, with hype, but Shedeur, he's operating with the composure of a guy who knows what's coming. He's not chasing the spotlight, it's chasing him. And the crazy part? He's not even remotely distracted by it. Think about how rare that is in today's NFL, where young QBs are thrown into marketing machines before they've even memorized their playbook. Meanwhile, Shedeur's got the endorsement deals, the documentary cameras, the YouTube audience, all of it. And yet, when you watch him on the field, none of that seems to exist. It's just him, the football, and the next read. That's maturity. That's what separates someone who wants to be a franchise quarterback from someone who already thinks like one. And if you don't think that level of maturity is noticeable, just ask the defense. The Browns' defense has one of the most aggressive secondaries in the league. Fast, physical, and absolutely relentless when it comes to confusing young quarterbacks. They love disguising coverage, baiting guys into bad decisions and rattling rookies. But Shedeur, he's already diagnosing coverages like a vet. He's not falling for the traps. He's not forcing throws. He's methodical, smooth, almost annoyingly unshakable, which for a rookie is practically unheard of. Now, this might ruffle a few feathers, but let's be honest. If this were any other rookie, say a first-rounder out of Alabama or USC, with this kind of poise and production in camp, we wouldn't even be having this quarterback competition conversation. The media would be all in. The coaches would be clearing the runway. But because it's Shedeur, because he came in with swagger, a last name that rattles tradition, and a fan base that's already borderline obsessive, he gets held to a different standard. And yet, he keeps meeting it, keeps surpassing it. keeps rewriting the script that others try to draft for him. But let's pause and zoom out for a second, because what Shedeur is doing isn't just about the Browns. It's about the culture of the modern NFL. It's about challenging the old way of doing things, the slow-cooked development paths, the earn-your-stripes gatekeeping, the myth that you have to sit quietly in the background before you're allowed to lead. Shedeur is challenging all of that. And what's wild, he's doing it with grace. He's not out here demanding the starting job in interviews. He's not leaking anything to the media. He's not taking veiled shots at the depth chart. He's just showing up, stacking performances, and letting the field speak. And it's speaking loud. There's also this undercurrent among fans, especially Browns fans, that this time they don't want to miss it. They've seen too many almosts. Too many, maybe he'll figure out types. Too many quarterbacks who looked the part on paper, but couldn't handle the weight of the franchise on their shoulders. But Shedeur, he seems to thrive under that weight. The expectations don't crush him, they sharpen him. And as the days tick down toward the final preseason game, there's an unmistakable tension in the air, because everyone knows what this game could be. It's not just a final tune-up. It's potentially the final audition before Stefanski has to make the most important decision of his season. And don't let anyone tell you that preseason games don't matter. For some guys, they don't. For Shedeur, this one could be everything. This is the moment where he can prove, under the lights, that what's been happening in practice isn't a fluke. It's the future. And here's where it gets real. Stefanski has to decide if he's going to ride the wave or resist it. Does he lean into what's clearly catching fire with the team and the fan base? Or does he stick with the safe choice, a guy with more years under his belt, but less spark in his game? Because playing it safe, that's a gamble, too. And in this town, people are tired of safe. They're tired of waiting. They're ready to believe in someone again. And if you spend 5 minutes at a Browns practice right now, it's clear who they want that someone to be. Now, here's the final thing that doesn't get said enough. Shedeur Sanders isn't just chasing a job. He's chasing ownership of the moment, of the story, of a narrative that's followed him since he was a teenager on social media, being told he'd never step out of his father's shadow. But what they didn't realize is he's not trying to escape the shadow. He's trying to build his own son. And every pass he throws, every route he commands, every practice he dominates, it's another brick in the foundation of something bigger than a rookie season. It's the start of a shift. So if Stefanski has the vision, if he truly believes in riding hot hand, in recognizing not just performance, but leadership and momentum, then there's really no decision at all. Because Shedeur Sanders isn't just knocking on the door anymore. He's standing in the end zone, pointing at the scoreboard and asking, "Are you watching yet?" And Cleveland? They're watching. Now, let's talk about something nobody's saying out loud. Shedeur is redefining what backup quarterback looks like. He's turned QB3 return from injury into a brand new category. Not just skilled or ready, but in command. While some quarterbacks are still untangling playbook pages at the same point, Shedeur is refining reads, pushing timing, and building chemistry with linemen. That's not catching up. That's flipping the script. He's not a backup anymore. He's a benchmark. Which brings us to something rarely discussed in preseason noise. The effect his rise is having on team morale across the entire roster. When your quarterback, especially a rookie, silently elevates the room, something changes in how every player approaches their job. The cornerback in camp that was barely hustling to the sidelines, now he's sprinting because his quarterback's throwing with that kind of urgency. The linebacker that was half-assing coverage, he's now biting on every play, testing limits. Shedeur's intensity is contagious, and contagion is coaching. But let's pivot for a minute to something else equally critical. What this tells us about predicting success in the modern NFL. Charts, completion percentages, eye test metrics, they only go so far. They tell you Shedeur is improving. What they don't capture is how few young quarterbacks recover that quickly from oblique setbacks and then snap back to form with confidence. That speaks to character more than it does ability. The ability exists. What was in question is whether the mind could catch back up. It didn't just catch up. It's flying ahead. At this point, you're not just watching a QB competition. You're watching a case study in urgency versus procedure. The procedure path says, to the rookie, let them learn, build their patience, blend them in slowly. That makes sense on paper. But reality is different. The urgency path, it says, let him practice, let him thrive. Watch how that changes everything by week 1. Your offense, your locker room, your season. And Shedeur has shown that urgency isn't risk. It's a jumpstart. Now, let's talk about head coach dynamics. Kevin Stefanski is known as a cerebral, calculated, measured kind of coach. The kind who want to make the sure call. But that methodology works best when the sure call is obviously sure. You don't need a broken-in leather glove if the rookie is throwing touchdowns like a cannon on the first day back. That's not symptoms of caution. That's symptoms of an alternate reality. He's challenging Stefanski's own operating system. Trust the proven versus ignite the new. And here's something that happens when a rookie steps up like this. The optics in the NFL shift. Fast. Sponsors, broadcast producers, even front offices around the league take notice. Shedeur's working jerseys aren't just inventory, they're statements. The cameras that glued themselves to him in camp, they'll show up to games now, feature him on social feeds, sparking storylines that sell tickets. Suddenly, that rookie Q&A aspect isn't nice to have. It's a headline. But perhaps the boldest, least remarked shift lies in the self-awareness of the quarterback himself. Let's be clear. A rookie could dominate camp and still misplay ego. But Shedeur is not inflated. He's centered. His confidence doesn't roar. It resonates. He's aware. He's never said it in a press conference, but you can feel in his reads and the way he locks eyes with teammates. That's leadership. And leadership like that is rarer than a deep fade landed in full stride. Let's take a pause and think about the weight Cleveland fan bases carry. Long-suffering, pessimistic, hardened from cycles of hope, followed by heartbreak. For Shedeur to enter this vortex and not only survive it, but energize it, that's not easy. That takes emotional resilience on the level of veterans. Being able to smile when fans chant your name, that's not innocence. That's control. That's presence. Now, when it comes to the other quarterbacks on the roster, none of this diminishes their careers. It should only elevate the level of competition. But when one guy is giving you leadership and consistency on trajectory beyond the others, sitting him for a senior frame becomes not just conventional. It becomes complicity in sabotage. The offense doesn't just lose a thrower. It loses the spark that holds it together. So here we are. Shedeur's athleticism traffic isn't an accident. It's a revolution. A quiet, insurgent takeover of the quarterback room soul. The Browns have a choice this week. Lean in, or pretend it's business as usual. Because in this moment, business as usual, that's the worst risk of all. Cleveland doesn't get second chances at moments like this. Shedeur Sanders is living one opportunity. Are the Browns ready to meet him? Because the field is watching. The city is watching. And if someone doesn't answer that question before the Rams game, they'll be watching him answer it anyway. With his arm, with his calm, with his presence. Because Shedeur Sanders getting healthy again, that wasn't just a comeback. It was a reinitiation. And anyone short-sighted enough not to see that should have stayed in bed when he woke up. Here's the truth that's becoming harder and harder for the Cleveland Browns to ignore. Shedeur Sanders isn't waiting his turn. He's creating one. Every snap he takes in training camp isn't just a rep, it's a ripple. And it's reaching all the way from the locker room to the front office, to the fan base that's been starved for a quarterback who doesn't just throw spirals, but means something bigger. After all the speculation, after the injury questions, and after being slotted behind names like Pickett and Gabriel, Shedeur's return to camp has felt like a thunderclap. The guy didn't just come back to look okay. He came back like someone who knew there was a job on the line and refused to let it slip away. That fade pass in red zone drills, not just accurate, timed, that deep dig route off a third read, executed with the patience of a seasoned vet. And it's happening over and over again. He's not just getting better. He's performing under pressure. That's the part that people outside the facility don't always get. You can't teach calm. You can't coach poise. Either you walk onto that field and take control of the huddle, or the huddle controls you. And watching Shedeur interact with his teammates, you never know he's a rookie in the room. There's mutual respect. There's attentiveness. There's this growing sense of trust that this guy might actually be the one. Meanwhile, Kevin Stefanski still hasn't made his decision. And sure, maybe there's wisdom in waiting. Maybe it's smart to evaluate all 4 quarterbacks through every possible lens. But here's the issue. The lens has already shifted. The energy is shifting toward Shedeur. The players feel it. The media is leaning toward it. The fans, they're begging for it. The only question now is, will the Browns listen?